special word of thanks to the choir today, Craig and Jean. That was just beautiful. What a wonderful anthem that was, and based on one of the oldest scriptures in the New Testament. As Paul wrote to the church, he wrote about the trademark of Jesus that we should follow, and that is Jesus' faithfulness. And those words from our anthem today were right from that scripture, and that was actually a hymn that was sung in the earliest days of the church. What a blessing to hear it in this version today, and how appropriate too to our sermon today, because our sermon is about faithfulness. And there is probably, I don't think there is anywhere better in the Bible that you read more beautiful or poetic words about the description of faithfulness than in Ruth chapter 1, verses 16 and 17. I read that for you now. But Ruth said, "Do not press me to leave you or turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me, and more as well, if even death parts me from you." God add his blessing to the reading of this word. Well, we do all have different opinions about what is most beautiful in the Bible, what verses move us the most, but in my opinion, that is one of the most beautiful passages from the Bible. It is beautiful in its words, the poetry, the language, but it is also beautiful in what it is expressing. It is expressing love, and it is expressing faithfulness. Faithfulness. Well, it's fitting that the gospel, the section from Ruth, the verses from Ruth, that are perhaps the best known from that book would be about faithfulness, because that is the theme of Ruth. Or certainly one of the most important themes of this book in the Bible. The importance of being faithful. Yes, faithful to God, but also being able to express that faithfulness by showing it to one another. Our faithfulness to one another is so important. We see it in the story of Ruth, that old familiar story. And actually, it's interesting, Ruth, the book is named Ruth. Really, the character that drives the action in Ruth, almost you could say the main character, is not Ruth. It is her mother-in-law, Naomi. Naomi, who went with her husband to the foreign land of Moab. They left their nice little home in Bethlehem, went off to Moab with their two sons, where both sons found a bride. One son marrying Ruth, the other son marrying a woman named Orpah. Both of them Moabites, women of Moab. But then something terrible happened, the kind of thing that can test our faithfulness. The kind of thing that can happen in our lives that can test our love for one another. Ruth's husband dies. And both of her sons die. And so there they are, these three women, all on their own, no way to support themselves. Naomi's idea then is to go back to Bethlehem, go back to her family there. And she begins that journey, but just after she starts, she realizes that, boy, she's asking a lot of these young women who are going with her. And so she releases them. She says, go back to your own families. They can take care of you. There you may find other husbands. You may have the opportunity to have families of your own. And Orpah very sadly leaves Naomi and Ruth. But that is the moment where Ruth makes this wonderful declaration to Naomi, to her mother-in-law. Do not ask me to turn away from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people. Your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Faithfulness that Ruth shows, and it is shown actually throughout this book. Not only Ruth's faithfulness to Naomi, but then Naomi being faithful to Ruth, and Boaz, one of the heroes of the story, noticing this, seeing the kind of faithfulness that Ruth has for her mother-in-law. And then sort of coming to their rescue, helping them to survive, and eventually marrying Ruth, and then Ruth and Boaz would have children, and their great-grandchild would be King David, and then on and on and on, right down to Jesus. And so we see this blessing of faithfulness that they show to one another, bringing blessings to the world. They end up at the end of this story, all of them, blessed. Why? Because of the faithfulness that they have shown. And the fruits of that wouldn't just last one generation. It would go 1,000 years into the future to Jesus Christ, and then on down to us today. The faithfulness shown by Ruth, by Naomi, by Boaz here in this story, we are benefiting from the blessings of that even today, 3,000 years later. Well, if this kind of faithfulness can show this kind of blessings, bring about these kind of blessings in our lives, then we ask ourselves, well, how can we grab onto that? How can we grow faithfulness in our lives? How can we truly embrace it, grow from it, be blessed by it? Well, we can certainly not only look to the story of Ruth to find this out, we can look to countless other stories in the Bible and see times when faithfulness to God and when faithfulness to others, those around the principal characters, brought great blessing. Faithfulness. It is at the heart of the story of Abraham and Sarah, the heart of the story of Noah and Job and Joseph and Esther. And again, we're not just talking about faithfulness to God, which is important, but really focusing in on how that kind of faithfulness is lived out in this world through the faithfulness we show to one another. Being faithful to those around us. We see it also in the teachings of Jesus. You look at Jesus, and you know how we have named a lot of the parables of Jesus. Jesus didn't bring a title or make a title for his parables, but we have made titles for them, like the Good Shepherd. And a lot of the parables that are entitled Good, the Good Shepherd, the Good Samaritan, the Good Servant, what makes all of them good? Their faithfulness. The Good Shepherd is faithful to the lost sheep. The Good Samaritan is faithful even to a stranger he meets by the side of the road. The Good Servant is faithful to his master. Some of these are stories about how we should be faithful to one another, and a lot of them are stories about God's great faithfulness to us. God is faithful to us, to his children, to those he has created eternally and perfectly faithful. One of the greatest reasons, the greatest rationales for why we should be faithful. We should be faithful because God has shown faithfulness to us. You know what? It is faithfulness that makes all the best things in life possible. Friendships, families, community, all of these things absolutely require and depend on our willingness to be faithful to one another. So what is it then? Faithfulness, exactly. How can we cause it to grow in our lives? Well, the first thing we need to recognize is that faithfulness, of all the virtues, of all the emotions, faithfulness absolutely requires action. We can imagine having faith without action, though that would be a hollow faith. We can imagine having love without action. We can love someone and not show it, but that would be kind of boring, wouldn't it? If we love somebody, we never told them, we never showed them. But faithfulness absolutely requires action on our part. It is not faithfulness unless we show it in the world. We can't just believe we are faithful. We can't just feel faithfulness in our hearts towards someone we love, or toward a stranger, or toward a coworker. We have to show it. Faithfulness lives in our actions. And it is valued. Faithfulness in this world is valued. It's even valued here in our consumer society. Businesses value faithful customers. It's one of the most important parts of the customer base for any business. Those customers who are faithful to a brand, to a store, brand loyalty, they call it. And that's why we have frequent flyer miles and loyalty cards and all of those things to get us to be more loyal, to be more faithful, but then also to reward that. And if it's something that our businesses cherish, something that they value as a faithful customer, well, how much more is it a blessing when it comes to the people in our lives, the one-on-one interactions, not only individuals, but in communities as well. We show our faithfulness in so many different ways, and we have that opportunity each and every day. Faithfulness to our friends. We show that by being true to them and spending time with them. As we grow older in our lives and our friends are separated by distances, we show our faithfulness to our friends by keeping in touch and by responding to them when they contact us. We are faithful as parents or as caregivers to young people or as grandparents as well. When we take time for the kids and the children in our lives. And we also have the willingness, which isn't always easy, to hold them accountable for their actions, to help them to see where they have gone wrong, to help them to do better in their lives. We show our faithfulness as parents and as caregivers in that way, making sure we have time for those in our lives and giving something to them. We're faithful in our jobs when we show up and we're on time and we do good work. We are faithful to our church. When we give our church, when we give God within the church the gift of our time by coming here to worship, by giving of our talents here in the church, by giving of our resources, faithfulness requires action. We show it. We don't just feel it, we don't just think about it, we don't just imagine that it is important to us. We show that it is important to us. Never do we see this more clearly than in one of Jesus' great parables. I just mentioned it a moment ago, the parable of the Good Samaritan. I know many of us have seen this acted out or read sort of interpretative stories of it, and they have the fellows going by, the poor guy on the side of the road who's been beaten up, near death, and just looking terrible. And those first guys going by, and they want to help, right? Oh gosh, I should help. I want to help. I know it's right to help. I know God would want me to help, but, right? But I've got business in town. But I don't, I've got some other good excuse for not helping here. You see, it's not faithfulness unless you show it. And that's the Good Samaritan. Once again, an outsider, just like Ruth. Ruth from Moab, here's the Good Samaritan from Samaria. Showing faithfulness. Doing something about it. When it comes right down to it, you know what faithfulness is? A common, very simple explanation of what faithfulness is. It is the best within us, our faith, our love, our friendship. It's the very best things within us that we let out into the world, that we are willing to show to the world. That is faithfulness. And it has great power. Power to bring such blessings, wonderful blessings in our lives and in the lives of those around us. Our willingness to let the very best within us out. And to give it to those who are closest to us, those we take for granted in our lives. So often they're the ones who don't receive the faithfulness that they should because we are busy with something else or doing something else. And this person we take for granted takes the brunt of our busyness. And we are not faithful in the way we should be to them, showing them our love, showing them our care, telling them about what they mean to us. Faithfulness to others. What we are willing, the very best of us, that we are willing to show. What are we willing to put into action? And it's a great question, I think, for all of us here today. We sit and we think, well, what is the best within? What is the very best gift that I have to give? Now, all of us are different, right? And those around us are different too. Not only can we look at ourselves and look at our lives and think, what is the very best gift I have to give that I'm not giving to those around me? Or we could look at it the other way and say, look at those around me. And what is the very best gift that they need from me right now? What do they need from me? How could I touch their lives? How could I bring a blessing into their lives and show them my faithfulness to our friendship, to our colleagueship, to our love for one another? We show our faithfulness through our actions, the very best within us that we are willing to let out into the world, and it brings blessings. It multiplies out into the world, and it goes down through generations as well. That's one of the blessings to me. It is strange. I think it was unexpected for me as a minister, but one of the great blessings of my ministry has been to be able to be with people when they have lost loved ones. It is an honor. It's a great blessing. One thing you see with many, many folks, especially those from families, is you see how one generation, the love, the care, the blessings that they have been willingly sharing with one another, openly sharing with one another, at a funeral, or as the family gathers at a time of death, it is so obvious to see how those blessings from that generation have just gone down the generations. You see it in the children and their relationships. You see it in the grandchildren, and even in the great-grandchildren. From those who are the oldest there among the family to those who are just children, you can see it there in them as well. Our faithfulness to each other and our willingness to show the very best and give the very best to one another. It has an impact over generations in families, and so too in communities. Right here in this church, we perhaps do not speak enough of the generations that have come before. There are generations now in the 90-year history of this church that none of them are left. They are all gone, and yet they gave so freely, so generously, so lovingly, so openly, showing their faithfulness to this community. And we are still blessed by that. Not just by the structures that we have around us, but by the feeling in this church. We've inherited that. It's a blessing coming down through the ages, and it is up to us to carry that blessing on. So that 90 years from now, people are still feeling it here as they worship together. But of course the problem is, with all of this, with friendships, with community, with family, is we are not perfect. It would be easy to be faithful if we were perfect. That would be no problem at all. If no one ever made a mistake, if no one ever offended us, how easy it would be to be a fan of a team if they never lost. How easy to be a fan of a movie star if they never made a bad movie. No, it's when we fail. That's when the test really comes, and so faithfulness absolutely requires forgiveness. You want to grow faithfulness in your life, you want to show it to others, well, forgiveness is an important part of that. We cannot be in community with one another as a church, we cannot be in relationship with one another as a family, we cannot be faithful to one another unless we are willing to forgive. And not just once or twice, but over and over, 70 times, 7 times. To forgive is a part of what we must be, and it is another way that we show our faithfulness to one another. It's the recipe for bringing blessings in life, to show this faithfulness and be willing to forgive. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Where does all this come from? This faithfulness, this willingness to forgive? Well, it comes from our Father. It comes from our Creator. God was faithful to this world. This world is a broken place, not as He intended it to be, not as He created it to be. But did He start over? Throw it in the wastebasket? No, He said, I will be faithful to this world. And in the course of time, He brought to pass a solution so that we can live in faithfulness to Him, so that we can be forgiven, His Son, Jesus Christ. As we show faithfulness, as we show forgiveness, we are honoring God by imitating. Imitation, the sincerest form of praise and worship and flattery. To be faithful to one another, to forgive one another, to be best in life possible. And it's my prayer today that you seek not just to believe, not just to keep the very best that here is here within you, but to show to the world, to bring it to those around you, to live a life of faithfulness. And in that way, to truly feel God's blessings in your life. Let us bow in prayer. Loving God, we give you thanks that you did not give up on us, that you have been faithful to us. Loving God, we give thanks for your Son, Jesus Christ, who showed that same kind of perfect faithfulness even as he came into this world, even as he became a human being. He kept that faithfulness to you. Loving God, thank you that we are then, because of him, able to enjoy a relationship with you where we can both give and receive that faithfulness, where we can show it to the world, and we can see the blessings going all around us. And God, help us to embrace that. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.